Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you very much joining me and everyone to this careful reading of the Vishuddhimagga, which is the very important text and teachings compiled by Buddhagosha. So, as usual, we will tune up our intention and our attention to the best of all. Intention is altruism, that we are sitting not just see what I can learn for me, whether it's interesting for me, was it good for me, or wasn't really interesting for me. Oh, no, it was not worth it, I can read it myself. People can think all sorts of these things. That's very much an indication of lack of the right intention. Of course, all of you are not that kind, otherwise you wouldn't be sticking around. So, but there are those who actually could not continue with intention and attention, let alone retention, to sit through these teachings. But nevertheless, those who are great meritors. Today is the third last day of the Chundrul Dawa, so the time-wise very auspicious. Of course, subject is unquestionable, and most importantly depends to us, our action, our intention. So that's why these prayers to renew our refuge, renew our bodhicitta, and remind to practice always as a remedy to all problems with loving kindness and compassion. Really, so important, because when we lack these things, then we just judge, then we react, then we become very aggressive and very irritated because we lost the loving kindness. So these prayers are not just formality, but very good, not only to start at the beginning, but stay in that loving kindness state of listening. Stay in that compassionate state of understanding. Then it becomes even more meaningful than your other meditations. You would think, oh, this is meditation, this is a study, this is... No, it can become a meditation on loving kindness to yourself. It's the more you listen to, more lovingly kinder you are to yourself and to others, aren't we? Because others can't listen for us. Some people can take notes for you in the old days, and they can whisper. I've seen some couples, one doesn't understand the language, they sit next to each and whisper the teachings in their language because the other can't understand. They're sharing every bit they understand to the other. So you can see that we could be practicing loving kindness while listening to the teaching. Listening to the teaching isn't just for the sake of listening to the teaching, it is for the sake of practicing, showing and actualizing loving kindness, showing generosity of our fortitude, and thinking, if I listen to Dharma and 2 days later or 5 weeks down, I might be able to see things a little bit more skillfully and wise. And indeed you can. You have already seen some fundamental changes because you heard the teachings. And that's what they say, thus I've heard. It's not what the hearing is lacking, but it's just understanding with the right intention can improvisingly improve the great merit. Most disciples of Buddha are called birth born from the speech, Sunke. Those who are born become disciples by listening. And because they listen to the teachings with such good intent, then it brings a new person in them. Then that what used to be is gone, stopped, finished. But what was lacking has come to arise, exist. I know one nun in Ladakh, she and my niece were classmates, and they used to joke each other who will come out to be better. My niece was top of the class, And she used to tease her, why are you always lagging behind? I'm getting on the top. She said, oh, I will have a merit of a tail of a donkey. You will have the merit of ears of the donkey because you're ahead of me. Then my niece said, look, it may look like when we do the examination result, it may look like, who knows, that you will be the ear of the donkey and I will not be quite the ear of the donkey. Exactly, yeah. 5 years later, that exactly happened. Now she's the one of the rising Khenmos in the Sakya lineage, the Ladakhi nun. because she, when she first listened, she never thought she could be that, because she's Ladakhi and she can't understand Tibetan very well and all that sort of thing. See, so when you listen, it can change you. Particularly listening to not some kind of a informal talk that someone talks incoherently, but rely on such a authentic text like Vishuddhimagga. So that's very good that you are here. Let's do the prayers to tune up these intentions. Oyenda Buddha Dharma Sangha Ajara Vyada Ladama Bhavacha Ajandala Ajara Buddha Vajra Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajara Vyada Ladama Bhavacha Ajandala Ajara Buddha Vajra Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajara Vyada Ladama Bhavacha Ajandala Ajara Buddha Vajra. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never power for happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those never. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never power for happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those never. May all beings happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far, according to the intelligence and predisposition of it. Vedaya Chandandarama Agrelo Ekama So we finished last week the chapter 14 on the 5 aggregates. Today we are starting the 14th chapter, the soil on which understanding grows. Soil, this description on the bases and elements, what they call sense organs, sense objects, and sense consciousness. So they call this ayatana, dhatu. Ayatana and dhatu. So so that's on page 547. The description of the bases. The bases are the 12 bases. That is to say, the eye base, visible data base, ear base, sound base, nose base, smell base, tongue base, flavor base, body base, tangible database, mind base, a mental database. So basically talking about 6 sense organs and 6 sense objects. They call the base because the everything has a base from where things arise. So if you're frightened, you heard something or you saw something, so the base of your fear comes from your sense organs. And so that's why when it's talk about the elements, then the visually we might be our visual eye sense organ was excited or disturbed or attracted by it, and then the elements. So elements and base. Base is what? Elements is the consciousness and object linking together. So herein, these 12 bases will be described under 6 headings. The meaning, 1, 2, the character, 3, just so much, the 4, the order, and in brief and detail. 6, the likewise as to how to be seen. Thus should be known the exposition. Exposition meaning the detail, description. Herein, as to meaning, firstly, individually, it relishes, thus it is an eye, chakshu. The meaning is that it enjoys visible datum and turns it to account. It makes visible, rupayati, thus it is visible datum. The meaning is that by undergoing an alteration in appearance, color, its evidence, what state is in mind. It hears sunati, thus it is an ear. It is emitted sapati, thus it is sound. The meaning is that it is uttered. It smells gayati, thus it is a nose. It is smelt gandayati, thus it is odor. The meaning is that it betrays its own physical base. It evokes avyati, life, jivita, thus it is tongue. Living beings taste rasanti, thus it is flavor. The meaning is that it enjoys it. It is the origin, aya, of vile states subject to cankers, thus it is a body, origin being the place of arising. It is touch, pusiyati, thus it is tangible datum. It measures, munati, thus it is a mind. They cause their own characteristic to be born, thus they are mental data. As to meaning in general, however, base, ayatana, should be understood as such, A, because of its actuating, B, because of being the range of the origin, and C, because leading on what is an actuated. Now, the various states of consciousness and its concomitant belonging to such and such adore come object, among those consisting of the eye come visible datum, etc., are actuated, each by means of its own individual function of experience, etc. They active, strive, and endeavor. In these is what is meant. And B, these door come objects provide the range for those states that are origins. They give them scope, is what is meant. And C, as long as this suffering of the round of rebirth, which has gone on occurring throughout the beginner's round of rebirth, and so is enormously actuated, does not recede, so long they lead to, they cause occurrence, is what is meant. So all these things are called bases because they actuate, because they are the range of origins, and because they lead to what is actuated. 5. Furthermore, the base should be understood in the sense of a place of abode, store, mine, meeting place, or locality of birth and cause. For accordingly, in the world, in such phrases as the Lord sphere, Ayatana, and Vasudeva, the sphere, it is a place of abode that is called base, and it is such a phrases as sphere of gold or sphere of silver. It's a store mine that is called base. But in the dispensation, in such passages as, and so on in the delightful realm, those flying in the air attend him. It is a meeting place, and in such phrases, the southern land is a realm of cattle. It is locality of birth. In such passages, he acquires the ability to witness of it whenever there is an occasion for it is a cause. 6. As these various states of consciousness and concomitants dwell in the I, etc., because they exist and depends on them, so the I, etc., are their place of abode, and they frequent the I, etc., because they have them respectively as their material support and as their objects. So the I, etc., are the store. And the I, etc., are the meeting place because they meet together in one or other of them, using them as a physical base, door, and object. And the I, etc., are the locality of their birth because they arise just there, having them as their respective supports and object. And the I, etc., are the reason for because they are absent when I, etc., are absent. So, number 7. So, for these reasons, too, these things are called bases in the sense of place of abode, store, meeting place, locality, birth, and so on, and reason. Consequently, in the sense already stated, it is an I, and that is the base. Thus, it is the I base. They are mental data, and they are a base. Thus, they are the mental data base. This, firstly, is how exposition should be known here to the meaning. Number 2, character. Here, too, the exposition should be known as to the characteristic of the I and so on. But their characteristic should be understood in the way given above in the description of aggregates. 3, just so, and as to just so much, as just so many. What it means this? The I, etc., are mental-based data too. That being so, why is 12 bases said instead of simply mental data base? It is for the sake of defining door come object for the arising of 6 consciousness groups. And here they are stated as 12 since it is how they are classed when so defined. For only the I base is door arising, and only the visible data base is the object. The consciousness group comprised in a cognitive series containing I consciousness, likewise others for the others. But only one part of the mind base, in other words, the life continuum mind, is the door of arising, and only the mental data base not common to all is the object of the six consciousness group. So they are called 12 because they define door come object of the arising of the 6 consciousness group. This is how exposition should be known here as to just so much. 4. As to the order, here too, from among the order of arising I mentioned above, only the order of teaching is appropriate. For the I is taught first among the internal bases, since it is obvious because it has its own objective field, what is visible with resistance. After that, the ear base, etc., which have their own objective fields that is invisible with resistance. Alternatively, the eye base and ear base are taught first among the internal base because they are great helpfulness as respective causes of incomparable of seeing and incomparable of hearing. Next, the 3 beginnings with the nose base, and the mind base is taught last because it has its own resort, the objective fields of the other 5. But among the external bases, the visible data base, etc., are taught each one next to its corresponding internal base because they are the respective results of the I base and so on. Number 12. Furthermore, their order may be understood as that in which the reason for consciousness arise are defined, and it is said, due to I and to visible object, I consciousness arises. Due to mind and mental consciousness, mental object, mental consciousness arises. This is how the exposition should be understood as here to the order. Number 5. In brief and detail. In brief, the 12 bases is simply mentality, materiality, because the mind base and one part of the mental data base are included in the mentality, and the rest is base and materiality. So meaning all the 6 senses are divided in brief into mind and body. They call mind and matter. But in detail, firstly, regards to the internal base, I base is as to kind, simply I sensitivity, but when it is classified according to condition, destiny, the order of beings and person, it is infinite variety. Likewise, the 4 beginning with ear base and the mind base, and when classified according to the profitable, unprofitable, resultant, and functional consciousness, is of 89 kinds of 121 kinds, but it is of infinite variety when classified according to the physical base, progress, and so on. The visible data, sound, order, and the flavor base are of infinite variety when classified according to dissimilarity, condition, and so on. The tangible data base is of 3 kinds of consistency of earth element, fire element, and air element, but when classified according to the condition, etc., it is of many kinds. The mental data, because of its many kinds, when classified according to the several individual essences of feeling, perception, formation, subtle matter, and nibbana. This is how the exposition should be known in brief and in detail. 6. As to how to be seen. Here, however, all formed bases should be regarded as having no provenance and no destination, for they do not come from anywhere previous to their rise, nor do they go anywhere after their fall. On the contrary, before they rise, they had no individual essence, and after their fall, their individual essence are completely dissolved. And they occur without mastery being exercisable over them, since there exists independence on condition and depending in between past and future. Consequently, they should be regarded as having no provenance and no destination. Likewise, they should be regarded as incurious and uninterested, for it does not occur to the eye and the visible datum, etc. That consciousness might arise from our own occurrence. And as to the physical base and the object, they have no curiosity about the interest in arousing consciousness. On the contrary, it is the absolute rule that I consciousness, etc., come into being with the union of the I with the visible datum and so on. So they should be regarded as incurious and uninterested. Furthermore, the internal base should be regarded as empty village because they are devoid of lastingness, pleasure in self. And external ones are village raiding, robbers, because they raid internal ones. And it is said, bhikshus, I is harassed by agreeable and disagreeable visible object. Furthermore, the internal ones should be regarded as the 6 creatures, and the external ones as like their resorts. This is how the exposition should be known here as to how to be seen. This, firstly, is the section on the detailed explanation of dealing with the bases. So that's the basis. Now, the description of the elements. The elements next to that are the 18 elements. That is to say, the eye element, visible data element, eye consciousness element, ear element, sound element, ear consciousness element, nose element, odor element, nose consciousness element, tongue element, flavor element, and tongue conscious element, body element, tangible data element, the body consciousness element, mind element, mental data element, and mind consciousness element. Herein, as to the meaning, 1 as to meaning, 2 characteristic, etc., 3 order, 4 just so much, and 5 reckoning, 6 then condition, 7 how to be seen. Thus should be known the exposition. That's the outline. Herein, as to the meaning, first, the exposition of I, etc., should be known individually as to meaning in the way beginning it relishes. Thus, it is I, it makes visible, thus it is visible data, and the consciousness of the I is I consciousness. As to the meaning in general, A, it sorts out, B, it assorts well, C, a sorting out, D, it is sorted out by means of that, and E, it causes to be sorted here, thus it is a sort. A, the mundane sorts elements, when defined according to their instrumentality, sort out the suffering of normal round of rebirth, which is of many kinds, just as the sorts of gold or silver, etc., do gold and silver and so on. B, they assort well. They assort well with living beings, as a burden does with burden bearers. They are born in the meaning. C, and they are not only mere sorting out of suffering, because no mastery is exercisable over them. D, and by means of them, as instruments the suffering of round of rebirth is continually being sorted out by living beings. E, and that suffering being sorted out in the way is caused to be sorted into those. It is caused to be placed in them is the meaning. So each meaning among these beginning with I is called sort element. In the meaning just stated beginning, it sort out, it assorts well. 21. Furthermore, while the self of the sectarians does not exist with an individual essence, not so these. These, on the contrary, are elements, since their cause are states on individual essence to be born. And just as the world, the variously colored constituents of marble, such as malachite and beginning with I elements, are elements like those, for they are variously colored constituents of knowledge and the knowable. Or just as the general term elements is used for the juices, blood, etc., which are constituents of collection called the carcass, when they are distinguished from each other by a dissimilarity of characteristics, so too the general term elements should be understood as used for constituent of the selfhood personality called the pentad of aggregates. For these things, beginning with the eyes, are distinguished from each other by a dissimilarity of characteristic. 22. Furthermore, element is a term for what is soulless, and for the purpose of abolishing the perception of soul, the Blessed One accordingly taught the elements in such passages as Bhikkhu, this man has 6 elements. Therefore, the exposition should be understood here firstly as the meaning of thus it is an I, and that is an element, thus it is an I element. It is mind consciousness, and that is an element, and thus it is mind consciousness element. 2. As to characteristic, etc., here too the exposition should be understood as to the characteristic, etc., of I, and so on. And that should be understood in the way given above the description of the aggregate. As to the order, here too, from among the order of arising, etc., mentioned above, only the order of teaching is appropriate. It is set forth according to successive definition of cause and fruit. For the pair, I element and the visible data are the cause, and I conscious element is the fruit. In such case, for as to just so much, as to just so many, what is meant by this? In various places of the suttas and Abhidhamma, the following as well as other elements are met with the illumination element, beauty element, base consisting of boundless element, space element, base consisting of boundless consciousness element, base consisting of nothingness element, base consisting of perception and feeling element, sense desire element, ill will element, cruelty element, renunciation element of neither perception nor non-perception element, sense cessation, non-ill will element, non-cruelty element, bodily pleasure element, bodily pain element, joy element, grief element, equanimity element, ignorance element, initiative element, launching element, persistent element, inferior element, medium element, superior element, earth element, water element, fire element, air element, space element, consciousness element, formed element, unformed element, the world of many elements, of various elements. That being so, why is the classification only made according to the 18 instead of making it according to all of them? Because as far as individual essence is concerned, all existing elements are included in that classification. 26. The visible data element itself is the illumination element. The beauty element is bound up with the visible data and so on. Why? Because it is the sign of beautiful, sign of the beautiful. The sign of the beautiful is the beauty element, and that does not exist apart from visible data and so on. Or since the visible data, etc., there are objects consisting of profitable karma results are themselves the beauty element. That is thus merely visible data and so on. As regard the base consisting of boundless space element, etc., the consciousness is mind consciousness element only, while the remaining states are mental data element, but the cessation of perception and feeling element does not exist as an individual essence, for that is merely the cessation of two elements. The sense desire element is neither merely the mental data element, according as it is said. Herein, what is the sense desire element? It is the thought, applied thought, wrong thinking that associate with the sense desires, or it is 18 elements according to as it is said, making the avijji hell with the lower limit of the making the para nimitta vasati deities in upper limit, aggregates, elements, base, materiality, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness that are in this interval belong here, are included here. These are called sense desire elements. The renunciation element is mental mental data element, also because of the passage. Also, all profitable states are the renunciation element. It is mind consciousness element too. The elements of ill will, cruelty, non-ill will, non-cruelty, bodily pleasure, bodily pain, joy, grief, equanimity, ignorance, initiative, launching, and persistence are the mental data elements too. The inferior, medium, and superior elements are the 18 elements themselves. For inferior I, etc., are the inferior element, and medium and superior I, etc., are the medium and superior elements. But literally speaking, the unprofitable mental data elements and mind consciousness elements are inferior element. Both these elements, when mundane profitable or mundane indeterminate, the I elements, etc., are the medium element, but the supramundane mental data element and mind conscious elements are superior element. The earth, fire, and air elements are tangible data element. The water element and the space element are the mental data element only. Consciousness element is term summarizing the 7 consciousness element beginning with I consciousness. 17 elements and one part of the mental data element are the formed element, but the unformed element is one part of the mental data element only. The world of many elements, various elements, is merely what is divided up into the 18 elements. So they are given as 18 because as to individual elements, all existing elements are included in that classification. Furthermore, they are stated as 18 for the purpose of eliminating that kind of perception to be found in those who perceive a soul in consciousness, the individual essence of which is cognizing, for there are beings who perceive a soul in consciousness, the individual elements, essence of which is cognizing. And so the Blessed One who was desirous of eliminating long inherent perception of a soul has expounded the 18 elements, thus making evident to them not only consciousness multiplicity when classed as eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, conscious elements, and mind consciousness elements, but also in its impermanence, which is due to its existing independence on eye, visible data, etc., as conditions. What is more, the inclination of those who are teachable in this way have to be considered, and in order to suit the inclination of beings who are teachable by our teaching that is neither too brief nor too long, element 18 are expounded. For by methods terse and long as need they may be, he taught the law, so that from beings' hearts, if they have wit to learn, the dark departs, melting in the good Dharma's brilliancy. This is how the exposition should be understood here to just so much. 5. As to reckoning, the eye elements firstly is reckoned as one thing, according to kind, namely eye sensitivity. Likewise, ear, nose, tongue, body, visible data, sound, odor, the flavor elements are reckoned as ear sensitivity and so on. But the tangible data element is reckoned as three things, namely earth, fire, and water, air. The eye consciousness element is reckoned as two things, namely profitable and unprofitable karma result. Likewise, the conscious elements of ear, nose, tongue, and body. The mind elements are reckoned as three things, namely the 5-door, advertising, and profitable and unprofitable, and resultant receiving. The mental data element is 20 things, namely 3 immaterial aggregates, 16 kinds of subtle matter, and unformed element. The mind conscious elements are reckoned with 76 things, namely the remaining profitable, unprofitable, and indeterminate consciousness. This is how the exposition should be understood as to reckoning. 6. The condition. The eye elements, firstly, is a condition in 6 ways, namely disassociation, presence, non-disappearance, support, and faculty for the eye consciousness element. The visible data element is a condition for 4 ways, namely presence, non-disappearance, and object for the eye consciousness element. Similarly, with the ear element and the sound element of ear consciousness element, so on. The adverting mind element is a condition as to 5 conditions, namely proximity, contiguity, absence, disappearance, and proximity, decisive support. For these 5, beginning with eye consciousness element, and these 5 are so too for the receiving mind element. And so is the receiving mind element for the investigating mind consciousness element, and so is that too for the for determining mind consciousness elements, and so is the determining mind consciousness element for impulsion and mind consciousness element. But the impulsion mind consciousness element is a condition, and the 6 conditions, namely as to 5 already stated, and as repetition condition for the immediately following impulsion mind conscious element. This firstly is the way in the case of 5 doors. In the case of mind door, however, the life continuum mind consciousness element is a condition, as to the previous state 5 condition, for the adverting mind consciousness element. And the adverting mind consciousness elements is so far for the impulsion mind conscious element. The mental data element is a condition in many ways as connaissance, mutuality, support, association, presence, non-disappearance, etc. for the 7 consciousness elements. The I element, etc. for some of the mental data elements are conditioned as object conditions, etc. for some of the mind consciousness element, and not only are the I and visible data are conditions for I consciousness element, etc., respectively, but also side, etc., are too. Hence, the former teacher said, I consciousness arises due to I, visible data, light, and attention. Ear consciousness arises due to ear, sound, aperture, and attention. Nose consciousness arises due to nose, odor, air, and attention. Tongue consciousness arises due to tongue, flavor, water, and attention. Body consciousness arises due to body, tangible datum, earth, and attention. Mind consciousness arises due to life, continuum, mind, mental datum, and attention. This is in brief. But the kinds of condition will be explained in detail in the description of dependent origination in chapter 18. This is how the exposition should be understood as to the condition. Number 7, to be seen. The meaning is that here too the exposition should be understood as to how they are to be regarded. For all formed elements are to be regarded as secluded from the past and future, as void of any lastingness, beauty, pleasure, or self, or as existing and dependent on condition. Individually, however, the I element should be regarded as the surface of the datum, surface of the drum, the visible data element as the drumstick, and I consciousness element as the sound. Likewise, the I element should be regarded as the surface of a looking glass, the visible data element as the face, and the I consciousness element as the image of the face. Or, alternatively, the I element should be regarded as the sugar cane or sesagum, the visible data element as the sugar cane, meal, or the sesamum, wheel road, and I conscious element as the sugar cane juice or the sesamum oil. Likewise, the I element should be regarded as the lower fire stick, the visible data element is the upper fire stick, and I consciousness element as the fire. So too in the case of ear and so on. The mind element, however, should be regarded as the forerunner and the follower of I consciousness, etc., as that arises. As to the mental data element, the feeling aggregate should be regarded as the dart, as a stake, the perception and formation aggregate as the disease owing to the connection with the dart and stake of feeling. Or the ordinary man's perception should be regarded as an empty fist because it produces pain through disappointed desire, or as a forest deer with a scarecrow because it apprehends the sign incorrectly. And the formation aggregate should be regarded as a man who throw one into the pit of hot coals because they throw one into rebirth linking, or as thieves pursued by the king's men because they are pursued by the pains of birth, or as the seeds of a poison tree because they are the root cause of aggregates continuity, which brings all kinds of harm. And materiality should be regarded as a razor wheel because it is the sign of various kinds of dangers. The unformed element, however, should be regarded as deathless, as peace, as safety. Why? Because it is the opposite of ill will. The mind consciousness element should be regarded as a forest monkey because it does not stay still on its object, or as a wild horse because it is difficult to tame, or as a stick flung into the air because it falls anyhow, or as a stage dancer because it adopts the guise of a various defilements such as greed and hate. The 15th chapter calls description-based elements in the treatise of the development of understanding and the path of purification composed for the purpose of gladdening the good people. So that's That concludes that chapter. That chapter 15. And now the chapter 16 is so still continuing the soil on which understanding grows, description of faculties and the truths. Now this is in relation to the Four Noble Truths. The description of faculties. The faculties listed next to the elements, chapter 16, are the 22 faculties, namely eye faculty, ear faculty, nose faculty, tongue faculty, body faculty, and mind faculty, feminine faculty, masculine faculty, life faculty, pleasure faculty, pain faculty, joy faculty, grief faculty, equanimity faculty, faith faculty, energy faculty, mindfulness faculty, concentration faculty, faculty of understanding faculty, I shall come to know the unknown faculty, final knowledge faculty, and final knower faculty. These are usually called 22 faculties. Sometimes they mention in Vajrayana symbolisms of. Anyway, so that's that. And herein, how will this be explained? As to meaning, 1, 2, characteristic, 3, the order, 4, the divided and undivided, 5, likewise function, 6, also plain, and this exposition should be known. So there are 6 subtopics under which this will be discussed. Here, firstly, the meaning of I, etc., is explained in the beginning. It relishes, thus it is an I. But as regards to last 3, the first is called I shall come to know the unknown faculty, because it arises in the initial stage of the stream entry path moment in one who has entered on the way. Thus I shall come to know deathless state, or the Dhamma of the four truths not known, and because it carries the meaning of faculty, rulership. The second of them called final knowledge faculty, because of knowing finally, and because it carries the meaning of faculty. The third is called the final knower because it arises in one who has destroyed the cankers, who possess the final knowledge, whose task of getting to know the four truths is finished, and because it carries the meaning of the faculty. 4. But what is this meaning of faculty that they have? A. The meaning of being the mark of a ruler is the meaning of the faculty, rulership. B. Meaning of being taught by the ruler is the meaning of faculty. Third, C. The meaning of being seen by a ruler is the meaning of faculty. D. The meaning of being seen appeared by the ruler is the meaning of faculty. E. The meaning of having been being fostered by a ruler is the meaning of faculty, and all that applies here in one instance or another. The Blessed One, the fully enlightened, is a ruler because of supreme lordship. So is Dharma, profitable and unprofitable, for no one has lordship over the kinds of karma. So here the faculty, indriya, which are stated as karma, are the mark of profitable, unprofitable karma. And since they are prepared by it, they are faculties in the sense of A, being marked of a ruler, and D, in the sense of having been prepared by a ruler. But since they have also been correctly made evident and disclosed by the Blessed One, they are all faculties. B, in the sense of being taught by a ruler, and C, in the sense of being seen by a ruler. And since some of them were cultivated by a Blessed One, a ruler of sages, in his cultivation of domain, and some in his cultivation of development, they are faculties. E, in the sense of being fostered by a ruler. Furthermore, there are I faculty rulership in the sense of lordship called predominance. For predominance of the I, etc., is implied in the occurrence of I consciousness, etc., because of the consciousness keenness when that faculty is seen keen, and slowness when it is slow. This firstly is the exposition of the meaning. 2. As to the characteristics and so on, the meaning is that the exposition of the I and so on should be known according to characteristic, function, manifestation, proximate cause, and so on. But these characteristics, etc., of theirs are given above the description of aggregates. For the four beginning with the understanding faculty are simply non-delusion as to meaning. The rest are each given there as such. 3. As to order, this too is only the order of teaching. Herein the noble plane, which is the stage of the stream entry, etc., is attained through the full understanding of the internal states, and so the I faculty and the rest included in the selfhood are taught first. Then the femininity faculty, masculine faculty, shows to show on what account selfhood is called man, woman, and man. Next, the life faculty, to make it shown that although the selfhood is twofold, still its existence bound up in the life faculty. Next, the bodily pleasure faculty, etc., is to make known that there is no remission of these feelings so long as that selfhood continues, that all feelings is ultimately suffering. Next, the faith faculty, etc., to show the way, since these things are developed in order to make the suffering cease. Next, I shall come to know the unknown faculty, to show that the way is not sterile, since it is through this way this state is first manifested in oneself. Next, the final knowledge faculty, because it is the fruit of last mentioned faculty, and so must be developed after it. Next, the final knower faculty, the supreme reward, is taught last to make it known that is attained by development, and that when it is attained, there is nothing more to be done. This is the order here. 4. As to divided and undivided. Here there is only division of life faculty, for that is twofold, as to the material life faculty and immaterial life faculty. There is no division to others. This is how the exposition should be known here as to divided and undivided. Number 5, as to function. What is the faculty's function? Firstly, because of the words I base is a condition, as faculty condition for the I consciousness element, for the state associated with therewith. The I faculty's function is to cause its own keenness, slowness, and etc., the occurrence of the I consciousness and associate states, etc., in a mode of parallel to its own, which is called the keenness, slowness, etc., their function being accomplishable through the state of faculty condition. So too in the case of the ear, nose, tongue, and body. But the function of the mind faculty is to make connaissance states subject to its own mastery. That of the life faculty is to maintain connaissance states. That of the feminine faculty and the masculine faculty is to allot the modes of mark, sign, work, base of man and woman. That of faculties of pleasure, pain, joy, and grief is to govern the connaissance states, to impart their own particular modes of grossness on their states. That of the equanimity faculty is to impart to them in a mode of quiet, superiority, neutrality. That of the faculty of faith, etc., is to overcome opposition and to impart to associate state that the mode of confidence and so on. That of the I shall come to know, and the unknown faculty is both to abandon three fetters and to confront the associate states with abandonment of them. That of the final knowledge faculty is both to accentuate and abandon respectively last ill will, etc., and to subject connaissance states to its own mastery. That of the final knower, the faculty is both to abandon endeavor in all functions and is conditioned associated with states by confronting them with the deathless. This is how the exposition should be known here as a function. Sixth, as to plane. The faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, femininity, masculinity, pleasure, pain, grief are of sense sphere only. The mind faculty, life faculty, equanimity faculty, and the faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, understanding are included in the 4 planes. The joy faculty is included in the 3 planes, namely sense sphere, fine material sphere, and supermundane. The last 3 are supermundane only. This is how the exposition should be known here as to plane. The monk who knows the urgent need to keep the faculties restrained by fully understanding them will make an end of suffering. This is the section of the detailed explanation dealing with faculties. Now, B is description of the truth. This is the noble truths. This is very, very interesting. The truth next to that are the 4 noble truths. That is to say, the noble truths of suffering, noble truth of origin of suffering, noble truth of cessation of suffering, noble truth way leading to the cessation of suffering. Herein, 1 is to the class, 2 derivation, 3 division by characteristic, etc., 4 as to meaning, 5 tracing out meaning, and likewise 6 neither less nor more than 4, 7 as to the order why they are there, 8 as to the expounding, birth and so on, 9 knowledge of function, 10 as to the division of content, 11 as to simile, and 12 tetrad, 13 as to void, 14 the single fold, and so on, 15 similar and dissimilar. Thus should be known as exposition. So the 4 noble truths will be understood under 15 subtopics. By those who know the teaching's order. Herein, as to the class, meaning of the 4 the truths of suffering, etc., are analyzed as 4. In each case, they are real, not unreal, not otherwise, and must be penetrated by those penetrating suffering, etc. According as it is said, suffering meaning is oppressing, meaning of being formed, meaning of burning, meaning of changing. These are sufferings for meaning of suffering, which are real, not unreal, not otherwise. Origins meaning of suffering of origins meaning is accumulating, meaning of source, meaning of bondage, meaning of impeding. Cessation's meaning is of escape, meaning of seclusion, meaning of being unformed, meaning of deathlessness. The path meaning of outlet, meaning of cause, meaning of seeing, meaning of predominance. These are the path meaning of path, which are real, not unreal, not otherwise. Likewise, suffering meaning is of oppressing, meaning of being formed, meaning of burning, meaning of change, its meaning of penetration to, and so on. So suffering, etc., should be understood according to the 4 meanings analyzed in each case. As to the derivation. The division by characteristics, etc. Here, however, firstly, as to derivation of the word dukkha, suffering, the word du, bad, means bad, is met with in the sense of vile, kuchita, for they call a vile child a duputta, bad child. The word come-ness, however, is met with the sense of empty, tucha, for they call empty space come. And the first truth is vile because it is the haunt of many dangers, and it is empty because it is devoid of lastingness, beauty, pleasure, self-conceived by rash people. So it is called dukkam, badness, suffering, pain, because of vileness and emptiness. Second, samudaya, origin. The word sam, the prefix kon, denotes connection, as in the words samagama, concourse, coming together, sametta, congregated, come together, and so on. The word u denotes arising up, as in words upana, arising, arisen, udita, ascended, gone up, and so on. The word aya denotes the reason, karana. And this second truth is reason for the rising of suffering when combined with the remaining condition. So it is called dukkha samudaya, origin of suffering, because it is the reason of in combination of arising of suffering. Third, nirodha, cessation. The word ni denotes absence, and the word radha, a prison. Now the third truth is void of all destinies by rebirth, and so there is no constraint, radha, of suffering, here reckoned as the prison of the round of rebirth. So, or when the cessation has been arrived at, there is no more constraint of suffering reckoned as the prison of the round of rebirth. And being the opposite of that prison, it is called dukkha nirodha, cessation of suffering. Or alternatively, it is called cessation of suffering because it is a condition for the cessation of suffering consisting in non-arising. Nirodha gamini patipada, way leading to cessation, because the fourth truth leads to the cessation of suffering, since it confronts that cessation as its object, as being the way to obtain cessation of suffering. It is called dukkha nirodha gamana patipada, the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They are called noble truths because noble ones, the Buddhas, etc., penetrate them according as it is said. Bhikkhus, they are these four noble truths. What for? These bhikkhus are the four noble truths. The noble ones penetrate them, therefore they are called noble truths. Besides, the noble truths are the noble ones' truths. According to, it is said, bhikkhus in the world with the deities, its maras and its brahmas, in its generation of its ascetics and brahmanas, with its prince and man, perfect one is the noble one. That is why they are called noble truths. Or alternatively, they call for truths because of the nobleness implied in their discovery. According to it said bhikkhu, it is owing to the correct discovery of these four noble truths. Their perfect one is called accomplished, fully enlightened. Besides, the noble truths are the truths that are noble. It is noble to be not unreal. The meaning is not deceptive. According to as it is said, bhikkhu, these four noble truths are real, not unreal, not otherwise. That is why they are called noble truths. This is how the exposition should be known here as to derivation. That's second. Third is how as to division by character, etc. The truth of suffering has the characteristic of afflicting. The function is to burn. It is manifested as occurrence, as the course of its existence. The truth of origin has the character of producing. Its function is to prevent interruption. It is manifested as impediment. The truth of cessation has the characteristic of peace. Its function is not to die. It is manifested as signless. The truth of path has the characteristic of an outlet. Its function is to abandon defilements. It is manifested as emergence. They have, moreover, the respective characteristic of occurrence, making occur, non-occurrence, and making no occur. Likewise, characteristic of a formed, craving, unformed, and seeing. That is how the exposition should be understood here as to characteristic, etc. 4. As to meaning, tracing out the meaning. As to meaning, firstly, what is meaning of truths? Satchata. It is that which, for those who examine it with eyes of understanding, is not misleading like an illusion, deceptive like a mirage, or understanding like a self of sectarians, but is rather the domain of noble knowledge as the real misleading actual state with its aspects of affliction, production, quiet, and outlet. It is this real unmisleading actualness that should be understood as the meaning of truth, just as heat is the characteristic of fire, and just as the nature of the world, that things are subject to birth, age, and death, according as it is said, Bhikshu, this suffering is real, not unreal, not otherwise, and so on in detail. Furthermore, there is no pain but affliction, and not that is not pain afflicts. This certainty that afflicts is what is reckoned here as truth. No other source of pain than craving, nor aught that source provide but pain. This certainty is causing pain is why it is considered truth. There is no peace except Nibbana. Nibbana cannot but be peace, is what is reckoned here as truth. This certainty that it is peace is what is reckoned here as the truth. No outlet other than the path. No fails the path to be that outlet. Its status as the very outlet has made it recognize the truth. So those 4 verses, one for each of the 4 truths. This real infallibility, which is their true essential core, is what the wise declare to be truth's meaning common in all 4. This is how the exposition should be understood as the meaning. 5. How as to tracing out the meaning. The word truth, satya, is met with various meaning in such passages as let him speak truth and not be angry. It is a verbal truth. In such passages as ascetics and Brahmin base themselves on truth, it's the truth of abstinence from lying. In such passages as why do they declare diverse truths, the clever talkers that hold truths. It is the truth as views. And in such passages as truth is one, there is no second. It's the truth in the ultimate sense, but Nibbana as the path. In such passages as of 4 truth, as how many are profitable, it is the noble truth. And here too is the proper and noble truth. This is how the exposition should be understood as to tracing out the meaning. 6. As to neither less nor more, means exactitude, why there are noble truths only 4. But why are exactly 4 noble truths stated, neither less nor more? Because no other truth, no other exists, and because none can be eliminated. For there is none extra to add to them, nor can any of them be eliminated, according as it is said, Bhikshus, that an ascetic or Brahmin here should come and say, this is not the truth of suffering, the truth of suffering is another. I shall set aside this truth of suffering and make known another truth of suffering that is not possible, and so on. And according as it is said, Bhikshus, that any ascetic or Brahmin should say thus, this is not the first noble truth of suffering that is taught by the ascetic Gautama, rejecting the first noble truth of suffering. I shall make known another first noble truth of suffering that is not possible, and so on. Furthermore, when announcing the occurrence that is the process of existence, the Blessed One announced it with a cause, and he announced non-occurrence as having the means thereto. So they are stated as 4 at the most as concurrence, and non-occurrence as to the cause of each. Likewise, they are stated as 4, since they have to be respectively full understood, abandoned, realized, and developed. And so, also since they are basically for craving, the cessation of craving. Also, since they are the reliance dependent upon, the delight in the reliance, the removal of the reliance, and the means of the removal of the reliance. This is how the exposition should be understood as to the number neither less nor more. 7. The order, as to the order. This too is the only order of teaching. The truth of suffering is given the first, since it is easier to understand because it is grossness and because it is common to all living beings. The truth of origin is given next to show its origin. Then the truth of cessation, to make it known that with the cessation of the cause, there is the cessation of the fruit. The truth of the path comes last to show the means to achieve that. Or alternatively, he announced the truth of suffering first to instill a sense of urgency into living beings, caught up in the enjoyment or pleasure of becoming. And next to that, the truth of origin, to make it known that the suffering neither comes about of itself or something, nor is it due to creation by an overlord, etc., but that on the contrary, it is due to their cause. After that, cessation, to instill comfort by showing the escape to those who seek the escape from suffering with a sense of urgency because overwhelmed by suffering with its cause. After that, path leads to cessation to enable them to attain cessation. This is how the exposition should be understood as to the order. Number 8 is to expounding birth and so on. Exposition should be understood here in according to the exposition of the things beginning with birth given by the Lord, Buddha, Blessed One, when describing the Four Noble Truths. That is to say, 12 things in the description of suffering. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair are suffering, association with the unloved is suffering, separation from the loved one is suffering, not to get what one wants is suffering. In short, 5 aggregates as objects of clinging are suffering. And 2, the threefold craving of description of the origin, that craving which produces further becoming is accompanied by delight on greed, delighting in this or that, that is to say, craving for sense desire, craving for becoming, craving for non-becoming, and nibbana, which has one meaning in the description of cessation. That which is remainderless, fading away, and cessation of that same craving, giving it up, relinquishing it, letting it go, not relying upon it, and the 8 things in description of path, what is the noble path of the way leading to the cessation? It is the eightfold path, that is to say, right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. The second, the truth of now explaining the truth of suffering, birth. How they explain all those 12 sufferings. The birth. Now, this word birth, jati, has many meanings. For in the passage, he recollects 1 birth, 2 births, and it is becoming. In the passage Vishaka, there is a kind of ascetic called Nigantha, Jain. It is a monastic order. In the passage, birth is included in 2 aggregates. It is the aggregate of whatever is formed. In the passage, his birth is due to his first consciousness arising. The first cognition manifested in the mother's womb. It is the rebirth linking. In the passage, as soon as he was born, Sampattijatita, Ananda, the Bodhisattva, it is a parturition. In the passage, one who is not rejected and despised on account of birth, it is a clan. In the passage, sister, since I was born with the noble birth, it is the noble one's virtue. Here it should be regarded as the aggregate that occur from the time of rebirth linking up to the exit from the mother's womb in the case of womb bone, and only the aggregates of rebirth linking with the case of rest. But that is only an indirect treatment. In the direct sense, however, it is the first manifestation of any aggregates that are manifested in living beings when they are born anywhere, that is called birth. 34. Its characteristic is the first genesis in any sphere of becoming. Its function is to consign to a sphere of becoming. It's manifest as emerging here from a past becoming, or it is manifest as variedness of suffering. But why is there suffering? Because it is the basis of many kinds of suffering. For there are many kinds of suffering, that is to say, intrinsic suffering, suffering of change, suffering due to formation, and concealed suffering, exposed suffering, direct, indirect suffering, and direct suffering. Interesting here, he talks about the intrinsic suffering. That probably is all-pervasive suffering, and suffering of change, we know, and suffering due to formation, and then concealed suffering, exposed suffering, indirect suffering, and indirect suffering. Of course, that's another way of classifying the suffering. Concealed suffering is like people might be enjoying a kind of pleasure of some sort, but they don't realize that is in essence would be cause of future suffering. So concealed suffering. Temporarily they are enticed by the wealth or rich or the victory or youth or fame or whatever it is, but they are all concealed. The suffering of loss, suffering of defeat, suffering of attachment is all concealed in the temporary pleasure. Herein, bodily and mental painful sufferings are called intrinsic suffering because of their individual essence, their name, and their painfulness. Bodily and mental pleasant feelings are called suffering in change. So, see, the bodily and mental pleasant feelings are suffering of change because they are a cause for arising of pain when they change. You know, when they don't change, which is not very long, they seem to be pleasant. Equanimous feeling and the remaining formation of the three planes are called suffering due to formation because they are opposed by rise and fall. Such bodily and mental afflictions as earache, toothache, fever, born of loss, fever born of hate, etc., is called concealed suffering because it can only be known by questioning, and because the infliction is not openly evident, it is called unevident suffering. The affliction produced by the 32 tortures, etc., is called exposed suffering because it can be known without questioning, and because the affliction is plenty evident, it is called evident suffering. Except intrinsic suffering, all given in the exposition of the truth of suffering, beginning with the birth, are also called indirect suffering because they are the basis for all kind of suffering or another. But intrinsic suffering is called direct suffering. Herein, this birth is suffering because it is the basis for the suffering in the states of loss as made evident by the Blessed One by means of the simile of Bala Pandita Sutra, etc., for the suffering that arises in happy destiny in the human world and is classed as rooted in the descent into the womb, and so on. Here the suffering class is rooted in the descent into the womb, and so on, is this. When this being is born in the mother's womb, he is not born inside the blue or red or white lotus, etc., but on the contrary, like a worm is rotting fish, rotting dough or cesspools, etc., he is born in the belly in a position like that is below the receptacle for undigested food, above the receptacle for digested food rectum, between the belly lining and the backbone, which is very cramped, quite dark, pervaded by very fetid droughts, redolent of various smells of overdue and exceptionally loathsome. And on being reborn there, for 10 months he undergoes excessive suffering, being cooked like a pudding in a bag by heat produced by the mother's womb, and steamed like a dumpling of dough, with no bending, stretching, and so on. So this firstly is the suffering rooted in the descent into the womb.
When the mother suddenly stumbles or moves or sits down or gets up and turns around, the extreme suffering he undergoes by being dragged back and forth and jolted up and down like kid falling into the hands of the drunkard, or like a snake's young falling in the hands of the snake charmer, and also the searing pain that he undergoes as though he had reappeared in the cold hells when his mother drinks cold water, and as though deluged by a rain of embers when she swallows hot rice gruel, rice, etc., as though undergoing torture of the lie pickling when she swallows anything salt or acid. This is suffering rooted in gestation. When the mother has abortion, the pain that arises in him through the cutting and rending of the place where the pain arises that is not fit to be seen even by friends and intimates and companions, this is suffering rooted in abortion. The pain that arises in him when the mother gives birth through his being turned upside down by the karma-producing wind and flung into that most fearful passage from the womb like an infernal chasm, and lugged out through the extremely narrow mouth of the womb like an elephant through a keyhole, like a denizen of hell being pounded to pulp by colliding rocks, that is suffering rooted in parturition. The pain that arises in him after he is born, his body, which is as delicate as a tender wound, is taken into the hands, bathed, washed, rubbed with clothes, etc., and which pain is like being pricked with the needle points and gashed with the razor blades, etc. This is suffering rooted in venturing outside mother's womb. The pain that arises afterwards during the course of existence is one who punishes himself, in one who devotes himself to the practice of mortification and austerity, according to the vows of the naked ascetics, in one who starves through anger, and in one who hangs himself. That is suffering rooted in self-violence. And that arising in one who undergoes flogging, imprisonment, etc., at the hands of others is suffering rooted in others' violence. So this birth is basis of all suffering. Hence this is said, now were no being born in hell again, the pain unbearable of scorching fires, and all the rest would then no footing gain. Therefore the sage pronounced that birth is pain. Many of sorts of pain that beasts endure when they are flogged with whips and sticks goads, since birth among them does this pain procure. Birth there is pain, the consequence is sure. While ghosts know no pain in great variety, through hunger, thirst, wind, sun, and what not too, none, unless born there, knows this misery. So birth, the sage declares, is this pain to be. In the world of interspace, where demons dwell, in searing cold and inspissated gloom, is pain acquiring birth there for its spell. So with the birth of pain ensues as well the horrible torment of being feels on coming out, when he has spent long months shut up inside the mother's womb. The hellish tomb of excrement would never come about without rebirth. The birth is pain, there is no room for doubt. But why thus elaborate? At any time or anywhere, can there exist painful state if birth do not precede? Indeed, this sage so great, when his expounded pain, took care first to declare rebirth as pain, the condition needed there. This firstly is the exposition of birth. We all have done it. How did we do it? So we'll stop there, everyone. Thank you for your attendance and listening. Very good. I have great experience reading this. It helps my mind. I'm sure it does yours. Otherwise, you wouldn't be giving your valuable time. Thank you very much, everyone. Yes, we know the teaching is so true.
and how we have continued being born so many times. I don't know how we do it. Anyway, let this teaching enable us to see how to uncause the cause of birth, and therefore try to find the actual cessation of birth through the merit of these teachings. Thank you, everyone. Whatever merit I have, may hope because the lovers true the Mahayana teaching courage manjuje no as a man the bara de life following all the example I shall de mere excellent body jida tebe veranaya where has been meeting freely with the generation.
Thank you, Rinpoche, on behalf of all your students, both here in person and online, for another term of wonderful Dharma teachings. So that concludes term 1 of this year, 2025. Thank you all for your attendance and company. And I'd like to particularly thank our committee and our technical team, as well as our sponsors and patrons who help to make these teachings possible for all of us. We generally go by the academic year, so the next term will be starting in early May. So please keep an eye on our website, sakya, sakya.com.au, to check when the next term begins. In the meantime, we have our usual Wednesday evening practice, Sunday morning practice, and we're also doing a Mondro, preliminary practices retreat, at Seba on the Easter weekend. And we also have a weekend of meditation the weekend after that, which is the Anzac Day weekend. So that's all available on our website. And once again, thank you all, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Again.